What happened to Sally Field's kids isn't a story about stardom passed down or fame inherited. It's a story about three sons who grew up watching a mother fight to be taken seriously in a town that didn't want to listen. While the world cheered her transformation from Gidget to Oscar Gold, her children watched from behind the curtains, learning what resilience really looked like. The eldest, Peter Craig, was the first to witness it all, and the first to understand that survival in Hollywood didn't come with a safety net. Born in November 1969, Peter arrived just as Sally Field's personal life was unraveling and her career had hit a wall. She was 23, recently divorced, and still suffocating under the image of the flying nun, a role that made her beloved but not respected. There was no real break between set calls and bottle feedings. In those early years, Peter's life existed on sound stages, inside trailers, and in the back of station wagons packed with scripts. But what looked chaotic from the outside was actually a kind of code. Sally was always there, even when she wasn't. She showed up to PTA meetings in sunglasses after night shoots, never missed a birthday, and taught her sons, especially Peter, that being overlooked didn't mean being broken. It just meant you had to work harder. By the late 1970s, Sally had cracked open the box Hollywood had shoved her in. Her haunting performance in Sybil won her an Emmy. Norma Ray earned her an Oscar, and Peter, then a grade schooler, was old enough to understand that something seismic had shifted. His mom wasn't just on TV anymore. She was a symbol of something bigger, a woman who had fought her way back from being a punchline. But success came with its own complications. Fame demanded absence. Long stretches on location shoots meant Peter was often left with grandparents or friends. He never complained, not because he didn't feel it, but because he understood early that his mother's fight was also for him. Still, the emotional toll of growing up in the shadow of ambition was real. By his teenage years, Peter wasn't chasing cameras or interviews. He was disappearing into books. Literature became his refuge, language his rebellion. He started writing fiction not to be noticed, but to find his own voice in a house where one voice already echoed loudly across the country. In the 1980s, while Sally was winning her second Academy Award for Places in the Heart, Peter was scribbling stories that had nothing to do with Hollywood. He saw the spotlight, but never sought it. What most people don't know is that Peter never used his mother's name when he published his first novels. He didn't walk red carpets. He rarely gave interviews. In fact, when he broke through in the late 1990s as a serious literary voice with dark, visceral novels like The Martini Shot and Hot Plastic, even industry insiders had no idea he was Sally Field's son. That wasn't bitterness. It was discipline. He once said in an interview, "I didn't want anyone to think it was because of her." That refusal to be seen through her lens wasn't rejection. It was respect. A reflection of the very lesson Sally had modeled for years. Earn your way, or it's not real. Even as his writing matured into screenwriting, Peter kept his distance from Legacy. When The Town exploded in 2010, and then The Hunger Games, Mockingjay and Top Gun, Maverick followed, he still resisted the Hollywood game. He didn't attend press junkets with his mom. He didn't leverage her name to get meetings. He built his own network quietly, methodically, just like she had. And yet, the deeper twist in Peter's story isn't just about merit. It's about how closely his success mirrored hers, without either of them needing to say it out loud. The characters Peter writes, bruised, guarded, painfully human, carry the same raw honesty Sally brought to the screen. Their emotional vocabulary is nearly identical. One in film, one on the page, both born of survival. What's rarely discussed is that Peter's early fiction was often inspired by fractured father-son dynamics, themes of abandonment, and characters on the edge of emotional collapse. It's hard not to see that as a direct echo of the years he watched Sally navigate abuse, single motherhood, and an industry that constantly told her she wasn't enough. She was his hero, but not a perfect one. And that complexity shaped every sentence he's ever written. Today, Peter Craig is one of the most sought-after screenwriters in Hollywood, known not just for blockbusters, but for depth. He's been married 3 times, has 3 children, and keeps his private life under lock and key. a habit he likely learned from a mother who protected him from the spotlight even while standing in it. He has no social media, no public scandals, no fame-chasing tendencies, but he has something rarer: respect. In a town that still trades last names like currency, Peter Craig remains one of the few who earned every credit the hard way. And the legacy he carries isn't about celebrity, it's about silence, grit, and a boy who grew up behind the camera watching a woman rebuild her life, then used that blueprint to build his own. If Peter Craig inherited Sally Field's quiet fire, then Eli Craig was born from her hunger to begin again. By the time he entered the world in May 1972, Sally had started to claw her way out of the lightweight sitcom roles that once defined her. She was still fighting for dramatic respect, but the cracks were showing in Hollywood's resistance. Eli's childhood ran parallel to his mother's reinvention, not the tail end of her struggle, but the heart of it. And unlike Peter, who spent his early years bouncing between sound stages and studio lots, Eli grew up in Malibu surrounded by coastlines and chaparral, a boy more fascinated by spiders than scripts. While Sally was preparing to shock the world in Sybil, Eli was off in the dirt collecting beetles. And when she won her second Oscar in 1984, he was 12, climbing trees, not climbing red carpets. The second-born Craig never wanted to inherit Hollywood. He wanted to escape it, and for a long time he did. After high school, Eli disappeared from Los Angeles entirely, trading the Pacific Coast Highway for snowpacks and trailheads. While his mother cemented her place as an icon, Eli was teaching strangers how to survive in the wilderness. He worked for Outward Bound, led mountaineering trips through the Himalayas and Pacific Northwest, and slept under stars his family had never seen. To the outside world, it looked like he had turned his back on the family business. But what no one realized was that his departure wasn't rejection. It was preparation. In the late 1990s, after nearly a decade in the wild, Eli quietly pivoted. He enrolled in film school and began learning how to tell stories that blended absurdity with sincerity, horror with humor. And just like his older brother, Eli refused to use his last name as a shortcut. No family connections, no favors. He studied genre mechanics with clinical obsession, not to chase commercial hits, but to master tone, to figure out how to make people scream and laugh in the same breath. Then in 2010, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil hit Sundance like a grenade. A slasher parody with unexpected heart, the film flipped horror tropes on their head and earned Eli cult status overnight. But even then, few realized who he was. And he didn't correct them. He didn't name-drop his mother in interviews, didn't market himself as Sally Field's son. What mattered to him wasn't the lineage, it was the craftsmanship, the same ethos his mother had drilled into him decades earlier, not in lectures, but in how she lived. Show up, do the work, don't complain. The real twist came in 2007, before Tucker and Dale, before the mainstream knew his name, when Eli directed an episode of Brothers and Sisters with his mother as the lead. It could have been a full-circle Hollywood moment, but on set there were no declarations, no "this is my mom" energy, just two professionals doing their job. Eli later said, "She never pulled rank. I never asked for credit." The moment passed without fanfare, but for insiders it revealed everything about their relationship. Mutual respect, distance without detachment. Sally had always given her son space, but never wavered in her belief that they'd find their voice, even if that voice didn't sound like hers. Eli's second feature, Little Evil, 2017, a Netflix original starring Evangeline Lilly and Adam Scott, confirmed what insiders already knew. He wasn't a one-hit director. He had a distinct cinematic tone, warm but strange, funny but unflinching, and by then, his life had taken another turn. He was now a husband, married to actress Sasha Craig, and a father of two boys. For a man who once slept in snow caves, fatherhood came with its own survival skills. Gentler, but just as demanding. And perhaps more than anyone in the family, Eli figured out how to live a creative life without being consumed by it. He never courted the press, never traded personal stories for headlines. but those who worked with him described an almost surgical calm, a filmmaker who understood that chaos didn't have to be loud. What's rarely mentioned, but quietly stunning, is how much Eli's films mirror the internal logic of his upbringing. Characters who are misunderstood, mistaken for monsters, or forced to navigate absurd systems that don't see their worth. That's not just comedy, that's biography. Tucker and Dale wasn't just a genre flip. It was a coded love letter to everyone who's ever been mislabeled, misread, or underestimated. Just like his mother had been. Just like he had been. And underneath the laughs, that's the emotional current that makes his work stick. He doesn't make movies to impress. He makes them to disarm. And that disarming quality, the ability to stay funny while telling the truth, runs in his blood. Today, Eli Craig remains one of the most under-the-radar talents in genre filmmaking. He splits his time between writing scripts and raising sons, keeping his family far from Hollywood's eye. And maybe that's the point. His mother built a career on emotional honesty, on playing women who refused to be flattened into types. And Eli, in his own strange, comedic, wilderness-tested way, took that legacy and bent it into something entirely new. He didn't follow her path. He forged his own. But the compass he used was always hers. If Peter built his identity in quiet rebellion, and Eli forged his in wilderness detours, then Sam Greisman was the one born directly into the calm after the storm. A son who never had to witness his mother fight for legitimacy because she had already won it. Born in December 1987 to Sally Field and her second husband, producer Alan Greisman, Sam entered a world where his mother was no longer scrambling for roles but being celebrated for them. She had already won 2 Oscars, survived the bruises of typecasting, and cemented herself as one of the most respected actresses of her generation. But just as her public life began to exhale, her private life took another hit. Sally and Alan divorced while Sam was still young, making her a single mother once again. Only this time, with legacy trailing behind her like a shadow. Sam's upbringing was marked by a different kind of complexity. He didn't grow up in the struggle, he grew up in the afterglow. The house he lived in had Emmys on shelves, scripts on tables, and a mother who'd seen the mountaintop. But that didn't mean it was easy. If anything, it made the silence louder. Fame wasn't a dream in Sam's world, it was the furniture. And navigating that space as a soft-spoken, introspective child wasn't about embracing legacy. It was about learning how not to be crushed by it. Unlike his brothers, Sam was drawn to words over action. He read, he observed, he asked questions that adults weren't always ready for. And by college, one answer became clear to him. He was gay. Coming out in a household like Sally Field's wasn't a risk. It was a reveal. She didn't just accept it, she amplified it. Sally became one of Hollywood's most vocal LGBTQ+ allies, not through press releases but through love. At the 2012 Human Rights Campaign Gala, Sam introduced her on stage, and in her speech, she called him the greatest privilege of my life. That wasn't performance. That was personal. Sam has spoken publicly about the safety he felt being raised by someone who never asked him to hide. But even within that comfort, there was tension. The kind that comes from being a child of celebrity in spaces where your name walks into the room before you do. In interviews, Sam has described the strange duality of being seen and not seen at the same time. People feel like they already know you, he once said, even when they don't. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. His mother was beloved. He was expected. And that made his journey towards self-definition even harder. In his 20s, Sam studied writing and film at Vassar College, gravitating toward small projects and honest stories, the kind that didn't need special effects or studio backing. He wrote essays, directed short films, and slowly began to find his tone. Candid, self-aware, lightly comedic but emotionally grounded. What many don't know is that parts of Brothers and Sisters, the hit TV show where Sally played a family matriarch, were inspired directly by conversations she had with Sam about coming out. His life became source material, but never without consent, a collaboration built on mutual trust. And in 2018, that trust went viral when Sally did what only a mother like her could do. She tried to set Sam up with Olympic skater Adam Rippon on Twitter. The internet exploded. Fans laughed, cringed, applauded. But beneath the spectacle was something deeply revealing. A mother who loved her son so fiercely, she was willing to risk public embarrassment just to make him smile. That moment wasn't about matchmaking, it was about connection. About a mother who never stopped trying to make her son feel seen, even when millions were watching. Today, Sam Greisman lives in New York, far from the red carpets and camera flashes. He writes, he creates, he supports causes he believes in. He's not chasing legacy, he's chasing clarity. And in many ways, he's the emotional anchor of the family. The one who didn't have to fight to be heard, but still had to learn how to speak. Sally has described him as the softest part of me, and it's easy to see why. He carries her tenderness without the armor, her insight without the spotlight. And while the world may not know his name like they know hers, his impact is no less profound. He's proof that visibility isn't always measured in headlines. Sometimes it's measured in honesty. 3 sons, 3 lives shaped by one woman who refused to be a statistic. Peter, the stoic wordsmith who carved out his own path in silence. Eli, the genre-bending filmmaker who turned absurdity into art. And Sam, the truth-teller whose quiet strength gave Sally Field her most personal victory. None of them rode her coattails. None of them asked for the spotlight, but all of them reflect the very best of her. Not as an actress, but as a mother. Because while Hollywood gave Sally Field applause, her sons gave her legacy. If you found this breakdown powerful and want more deep dives into the hidden lives of Hollywood's forgotten children, subscribe to our channel. Your support brings these invisible stories to light. Thanks for listening.